And so I'm like, ew.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Talk. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Enid, and we're here today with Zach Senkeresty, and a YouTuber who's making videos about dyslexia and how it's not such a bad thing. And Zach also happens to be one of my students, so we're so happy to have you here today, Zach.
I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. So,
How long have you been one of Enid's students?
I think it's coming up on, is it 3-4 months?
Yeah, a few months.
That's closer. It's close around there.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I started summer, I think.
It was funny. We all my students have to pick a book to read with me, which I have to say is very important out there to everybody working with students with dyslexia, for the parents to understand that students can work on things in isolation, but they need to generalize them into actual books or actual reading passages. And so all my students work with me on generalizing their skills into a book. And so Zach picked .com Secrets, which about building a business and building, .com business. And so together we were reading the book, and it at that point was too above his. I mean, it was at his grade level. He could read the book just fine, so there was no point in anymore working on the book. So we've dropped the book. But I learned a lot from the book and continued to read the book. And then the next thing I know, he comes to me and says, "I think I'm going to start a YouTube channel." So Zach, tell us about that.
Well, I kind of just started a YouTube channel. It took a lot of procrastinating, but I finally got there. I was laying in bed, like playing some games and stuff, and I was like, all right, if I lose this game, I'm gonna make a YouTube video. And I lost the game, so I was like, all right, I guess I gotta get on my computer and make a YouTube video. So I think I started making it at like 9 o'clock, and I kept on working on it until like 2, and then I was like, okay, so I'll see what happens, and I'll post it in the morning, and then we got it posted, and it started, getting some views, and I posted on Facebook, and it got some attention for sure, and it worked out really well. I got a lot of good feedback, and yeah.
Oh, are you talking, Ashley? Oh, that was because
sorry.
Your mouth was moving, but you were
no. Well, I muted because my dog started barking. So.
I was about to say something, but I'm like, I think she's talking.
What was your video about? What is your YouTube channel about?
It was more just talking about like that, like just to help like parents understand about dyslexia, just from like my kind of perspective, to like help understand what their kid's going through.
Oh wow! How many videos have you made so far?
Only one. I'm working on 2. I have to edit my second one. So.
And Zach, some parents have asked you some really good questions. What are some questions that you've been asked that you've been able to answer for some parents?
A lot of people ask me like what helped me with like learning how to spell, and one of the biggest things for me, and I know it's kind of weird, but getting that phone for me. So when I got a phone in 3rd grade, when you're texting and stuff, you kind of like just like catch on to like typing, and like then it corrects you. So like that's kind of what really helped me a lot. So that's kind of what made me go higher with my reading.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of my most profound dyslexics, most significantly affected with dyslexia, with the struggles, the way he started to really be able to make those connections was also with Siri and with the phone. And he would say, I would ask Siri to spell it for me, and then I would see it, and then I would make that connection of how it looked. And right. So many individuals who are dyslexic have that ability to be able to see visual patterns and think visually and see visually. And so to be able to, that's such a great strategy, Zach. And that's something that, interestingly, intuitively, many dyslexics pick up on. And I know with Zach, I can share that Zach probably visually has a visual memorization for, I would say, thousands of words. Zach can spell very complicated words. And then, if you don't mind me sharing, Zach, sometimes when I first met you, the struggle was with more of the things where it was more phonics based. And so because Zach hadn't been given proper structure in phonics and foundation in phonological awareness in phonics. And so, but that's an easy fix for someone at Zach's point, because Zach's already figured so much of it out. And so, but the point is it's amazing how with that visual ability and given that strategy, students are able to recognize words even when they're not able always to, have all the phonics skills. So you've definitely represented that. And that's a lot of students. And that confuses a lot of people because these students are so bright and so intelligent, and as Zach is. And so it's very, these students are very good at compensating. And that's where we get stealth dyslexia, twice exceptional. These kids are very, very bright. And so they will, go by and go by and go by. And then there's a point where they hit a wall. They hit a wall because the compensation only works for so long. So, and then the schoolwork gets harder and harder and harder. And I think you're seeing that now, Zach, too, right? The schoolwork now. And
yeah, it's just more massive schoolwork, and just like I'm thinking like some of these teachers are crazy because they're getting me, so much work to do. I'm like, like, what do you think I am, like Einstein or something?
but it's not about intelligence. It's about stamina and being able to have the foundational skills. And if you have all the foundation, you shouldn't have to work so hard. School shouldn't. I mean, so if the foundational skills are all there and everybody's been given everything that they need up until that point, then I mean, yes, there is way too much homework. But that being said, it's not as much of a challenge. You don't have to work so hard just to get things done. I mean, you see that, Ashley, even just with when you were in school versus, didn't you say am I speaking? Yeah, no, you've known other people though growing up that have struggled. And so comparing yourself to that, knowing that, when you have those holes, it's just a little bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, my sister and I have joked over the years about how we would have most of our homework done before we even got home at the end of the school day, because homework was so easy and so quick, and you could get it done unless you had to do things like research papers.
Right. You're one of those people.
I'm one of those.
No, I know, and I loved it, but I was like, growing up, I'm like, I wish I could, school could be that easy, and it would just frustrate me because I'm like, why is it so easy for them and so hard for me?
Definitely, but I'm watching, especially for my son, because he's made that transition from elementary into junior high, right? And so it's a completely different set of expectations. My husband keeps referring to it as elementary was play, and now you're in school. So, we're having to teach him how to study. We're having to teach him how to take notes. I'm trying to teach him, failing abysmally here, but I'm trying to teach him how to organize his papers and his notebooks and stuff. And, but that's where a lot of his executive function kicks in, and he doesn't want, I will tab everything and label everything. And, he's just got random papers just piled together, and he's got math and English and theater and science all in one stack. And it's like, okay, the science thing was a 10-page document. Here's a page, here's a page, here's a page. And he's like, I know it upsets you, Mom, but I need you to let it go right now. So that's a big thing that we keep talking about.
Well, you bring up a really important point about executive functioning, because I find this really interesting. Zach has extremely amazing executive functioning skills, I have to say. Me, not so much. Many dyslexics, not so much. I have several others that their executive functioning skills or organizational skills are exceptional. My hypothesis on this, and I don't know, is that if it's another way that dyslexics compensate and they master skills, they master gifts, right? So for some, I think, and some it might just be a brain thing, and I'm not sure. The people who understand the brain better could tell me that. But truly, I've watched students that even at a very young age have mastered the art of organization and executive functioning, because that's something that they know that they can do. And they're maybe when they're struggling in another area. And because the reason why I say this is because I believe we can work with kids on executive functioning really early. And I believe we can help them foster that as well, the way Zach figured it out, the way a lot of my other students figure it out. But I do believe it's something that, like you're doing with your son, that's a spectrum with dyslexia. Some are very weak in executive functioning, some are extremely strong. And so for whatever reason that is, we do know scientifically that we can improve executive functioning, that we can work on it and improve it. It can always improve. So it's interesting.
Well, and I think part of the problem is we throw so much at the kids at once, and Zach, you can probably attest to this too. He went from never having to do a whole lot of that to all of a sudden he's having to study, take notes, be organized. He's on an online platform. Every teacher does it differently. He has to do one click for attendance, a different click for a Zoom session, a different click for his assignment, a different click for where his notes are stored, a different click for something that he's got to submit. Then he's got all of his accommodations and his assistive technology tools. I mean, it's a snowball. It's an overwhelming snowball. And so I'm like, I need to let the organization go because that's my thing, not his thing. We need to just concentrate on, let's just get your homework turned in.
But you are helping him. So try to maybe do it in small chunks or find ways, because it's not, instead of letting it go, it's something that's,
Right.
but Zach, would you say somebody helped you with it? Or would you say you just, because I said like you came to the world with confidence. Did you come to the world with executive functioning skills too?
I mean, I guess I don't know. I kind of just like adapted to like whatever I had to do, and I'm a person that's organized, and I mean I have a whole list of stuff that I need to do, and like for schoolwork, and just like I have like 4 pages of schoolwork that I need to do, just like all notes, like, and I have a little check mark when I'm done with it, and I just know what I need to do. It's just that really helped me for the past like week or so. I just started to get into that part of the notes and stuff.
Do you seek out organizational strategies, or do you feel like people have helped you with that along the way? Is your mom very
You know,
organized?
my mom is pretty organized, but I don't think I learned it from her. I think I'm just an organized person, and just in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know where all my stuff is, and when I'm working on stuff, I know where my tools are, just like everything. Like I just know where everything is. I like to know where it is.
Well, from a brain perspective, that might be the visual, because you are very strong visual perceptually, so that might be in tune with that. You needing things kind of in an order of organization. Um, your teachers comment on how you help them organize their computers, and so it's at a level that's higher than most as well. So it's definitely, when we talk about gifts of dyslexia, it's, I think that's one thing that Zach really wants to share on his YouTube videos as well, is the gifts. And I think it's important when we talk about gifts versus, we don't even have to say weaknesses. I think we can say struggles, because everybody has struggles. And I even see it as a struggle that some of my non-dyslexic friends can't see outside of the box or see the big picture. That's a struggle for them. So I think we need to look at it, because we focus so much on the struggles of dyslexics or the weaknesses of dyslexics. And then, are there really gifts? There's a ton of gifts. And we definitely, Zach and I talk about that a lot. But everybody has struggles. And so, yeah, it's a struggle for other people that they don't have some of the gifts of dyslexia as well. So I see it that way. But yes, it's one of those things where, just when I was introducing Zach, I got a little flustered, and because I have an issue with names sometimes. We've talked about this. And so I wanted to bring that up, because dyslexics sometimes have a difficult time saying names, and sometimes months of the year and things like that. And for me, with names, I'm not one of those dyslexics that's gifted visually perceptually at all. I don't have the visual skills. That's a struggle for me, but I'm very strong auditorily. So if someone tells me their name in a conversation, I won't forget it because I heard it. But if I see a name first and I get it stuck in my head, it's a certain way, I get confused visually. So now you add the auditory to it, and I can't do it. I think, oh no, it must be that way. It must be that way. I can't. But then when Zach was able to tell me his name one more time, and I was able to see it one more time, I was able to do it. Now I pretty much have it. Point is those are the struggles, but we get through life in spite of those little struggles. But that is one of those things. Names can be very difficult for individuals with dyslexia. But again, I'm auditory, he's visual. So we all have different strengths and weaknesses in that way. But we compensate and we get through because we have so many gifts. So on both sides, whether we're dyslexic, non-dyslexic, whether we're on the spectrum of autism, whether we have Down syndrome, everybody has, gifts and struggles. So sorry, I just had to get on my little soapbox about that, because it's Dyslexia Awareness Month, and I definitely am so passionate about talking about the gifts. So Zach, what would you say are some of your gifts or strengths? You froze.
I think he froze.
You froze.
Yep, he's definitely frozen.
I think he'll be back shortly. Oh, we lost him.
No, come back.
He'll come back. So, and I know that's funny enough, and I'll just say this right before he comes back. It's kind of a controversial subject, whether
It is
dyslexia. And I do understand that when you've struggled your whole life, you're like, where's the gift, right? And so I do understand that. However, I think we need to find whatever gifts we have, whether it's, having compassion for others and animals, whether it's, being empathetic and being able to walk in somebody else's shoes, or having a visual ability to see art and produce art. I had a student yesterday say to me, well, my grandma says if you're not good at reading, then you better be good at spelling or writing. And she goes, and I'm not good at any of those. And I said, well, grandma is came from a time when they actually taught us the way we needed to learn how to read. And so grandma doesn't understand right now what's going on and the struggles you have with your brain. And she said, yeah, but then I'm not good at math either. And my siblings, they're good at this and that, and I'm not good at anything. And I said, you're good at so many things. And then we started talking about them. And I said, people don't judge art in school. You don't get a grade for your art. You don't get a grade for your PE, not in the way that you get a grade for other things. You don't get a grade for many of the different ways we can show our gifts. And so when we just look at it in terms of, what we get from our boss, or whether what we get from grades, or that sort of like mark of approval, then that's when we decide whether we have gifts or not, or whether we're good at things or not.
But I think that there's a semantic piece here, and I think that you kind of hit on it pretty well. So you're talking about gifts as in, what each of us has that's special for us, that's our talent, that's our strength, that's our et cetera. Versus, I think what the community pushes so strongly back against is the concept that dyslexia itself is a gift. And when
Oh, right.
Yeah. So when, you have people who have struggled so significantly in their life because, their schools didn't teach them how to read, verbal abuse, different various things that have happened to them in their lives. When people talk about dyslexia itself being a gift, I think that that's something that very much, or at least what I've seen, because I can't speak to it personally. What I've seen is that people push back against that and go, I'd rather not be dyslexic, because then I think that, my struggles wouldn't have been there like they were, maybe it would have been easier. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's a semantic piece, that because I love how you're looking at it, but I recognize the sensitivity from the community as a whole, but I see them as two different things. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh my gosh, I love how you explained that so much, because that's exactly what it is. It's that the struggle was not the gift. The struggle was never the gift, right? The fact that I had to work 10 times harder than everybody else. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier when I was saying, oh, you're one of those people, because my whole life I'm like, why it was so hard for me, right? And it's not, it was just more of a like not understand the way that some people don't understand what it's like to be dyslexic or to be neurodiverse. It's the same way that I could never understand why you could just read the book and take the test, or why you could just get the assignment done. It's that really difficult time understanding how we can all be so different in the brain and how we process things. Mm-hmm. However, but I love how you explain that it doesn't feel like a gift to so many, because it's caused so many struggles, problems, difficulties. And I think that when you're an adult and you've lived it, and it's brought you nothing but a lot of challenges, I can totally relate to that. I can totally relate to the fact that it wouldn't be a gift, and that it's frustrating that people would say it. However, I think when we have these precious little beings, these precious little minds that are so, open to possibilities and to potential, I think we need to help our children, as well as our adolescents and our adults that we connect with, let them know that yes, it feels horrible. It feels like the worst thing ever. It feels like such a struggle. However, these are the things we need to focus on. These are the things that we need to focus on. Yay, right? Just perfect timing. But these are the things that we need to focus on, so that this student can then know that they have gifts, right? And that it can be a gift, because it can come. I get it. I get that it cannot be a gift. It can feel horrible. But in my life, I now see it as a gift. I see the fact that I can see outside of the box as a gift. I see the fact that I can see the big picture as a gift. I see the fact that I can connect with many different people as a gift. Those are gifts to me. And without my struggles, I wouldn't have those gifts. And one of the reasons why individuals with dyslexia, I believe, are so empathetic and compassionate is because they've struggled, right? So the struggle actually gives you gifts as well. And one of the reasons why individuals with dyslexia have so much tenacity is because they've struggled. And 34% of a group of people surveyed that are entrepreneurs had dyslexia because they struggled. And you talk to any entrepreneur that's successful that had dyslexia, and they say it's because of the struggle, because they know that they can overcome any obstacle that a business will give them. They don't see things as, oh, I can't do that. They say, oh, it's an obstacle, I've overcome them before. Now it's mindset too, so all those things combined, at any age, we can help individuals see that they have gifts. I mean, I meet people all the time, and especially Dyslexia Awareness Month, where I say, oh, dyslexia, I'm telling them about, oh, I think I have, or they say it kind of sad, I think I have that. And I'll say things like, oh, well, you're a highly creative thinker, or you're able to think outside of the box, or this or that. And I'll mention some things that are strengths for individuals with dyslexia, and they say, yeah, I do have all that. So now they see it differently. So I think, but as young children, we really have to help them see their strengths and their gifts that they have, so that they can focus on those and not focus on the struggles, the weaknesses actually that cause struggles. And if we can do that, it's unbelievable what they can see they can accomplish, because these are very intelligent individuals. And so there's no reason that that individuals with dyslexia shouldn't be thriving. So, but I understand why there would be why they wouldn't be, why they would have feelings of, because I've lived that. I've lived feeling like I wasn't good enough and I couldn't do anything right. From those feelings of school, and feeling like, for a long time I did. But the more I focused on my strengths, and the more I focused on what I was good at, the more I could do more of that, and the more of that came. So, so as we were saying before, sorry, because I went on my soapbox. Ashley was able to really explain this issue that we have of, in our community, which is I'm very sensitive to it too. I do understand that there's a lot of angst and a lot of pain that comes with the struggle. And so I'm not trying to say that that's not there for many. I just really want to encourage us to kind of see it in a different way and really focus on the positives. So, and I know, Zach, with you, you have a lovely family, and I'm sure they did much of that when you were young. I'm sure they pushed you in directions of things that you were good at. So, and then there's some things that you've figured out along the way that you're just able to intuitively figure out about yourself, to know what you're good at as well. So what would you say are some of your strengths, your gifts, things that you think, because you have dyslexia, are a good thing?
I think he froze again.
We keep losing him. Oh my
We keep losing
gosh.
him. So his mother did comment, and she said that the internet is being very dysfunctional where they are right now. So
I have to say, in Sacramento, California, and I don't know if it's the fires, but their internet right now is, because I have a couple clients, it's really crazy. But I want to say Zach is a gifted water skier. Oh my gosh, he can do so many great, and again, it's that maybe that thing where he's like, I'm just gonna do it, right? I mean, the way he does in school, I'm just gonna do it, or whatever. But he I couldn't do any, I wouldn't even have the guts to do half the stuff he does on water skis. And it's not just water skis, he water surfs, like behind a boat, like all these crazy things. A gifted communicator. I'm just going to give some of the gifts that I know while he's not here, since very gifted communicator. I spoke with an IEE evaluator that evaluated him last week, and she said it was a true honor and privilege to evaluate this young man. She said he is so charming and such a good communicator. So that was, from an outside person, just and so he has ideas that you can't even believe. I mean, I want to hire him. He's 14, and he says, Miss, Enid, you can do this for your business, and you can do that. And I was joking around with him the other day. I said, should we tell everyone on Coffee Talk about your business savvy? He says, don't tell him my secrets. So he's so smart. He's so intuitive. He has so many great ideas, and he's smart enough to know, no, we're not sharing my secrets. I got some good ones. So he's very, great business ideas, will be an entrepreneur, no doubt in my mind. And sometimes when I speak with him, I think I'm talking to an 18-year-old, just based on his ideas and just. But this is a student who, and I'm sure his mom won't mind me sharing since we can't have him on right now. But this is a student who struggled. You can see how charming he is. You can see what a nice young man he is. And he struggled with behavior. And I think that's another reason. I think this is good for us to talk about, because this is so many students out there, of so many of our parents, where they have these great kids who are very intelligent, very sweet, go to school with, like they talk about, just happy and well adjusted and everything's great. And they get into school, and it was, I think, about second grade that he started to hit a wall. And he said to me that, I said, well, what was your best year in school? So it was basically first grade, because second grade was the worst. And second grade, and then it kind of went downhill from there. And he remembers that second grade got really hard. So what was fascinating is his mom went back through and his IEPs over the years. Just recently we had an IEP, and she went back through all the IEPs that he'd had. And in second grade, there was a comment that said that Zach said that he was acting out because he couldn't read. The student said, I'm acting out because I can't read. I mean, how much more clear can we be? you
Right.
know? And so it's so important that we all realize that, and that, and that we're able to help the schools see that this is not my student. My student is acting out because he's trying to tell us something.
So I want to share. So his mother just wrote that he's so upset right now that he keeps getting kicked off from the internet. So Zach, we totally understand, and we're here when you come back.
You can comment, Zach.
You can, and we can read all of your comments out loud. But based on what you were just saying, Enid, I think that is such a critical conversation that we need to be having, because that's such a core piece that is ignored. And we talked about it in the newsletter that we just released on October the 1st. Lauren Taylor authored a piece called Behaviors Before Dyslexia. And, unfortunately, we're looking at the behavior of our children before we ever ask the question, what's the underlying cause of the behavior that's going on here? How's the child doing? Are they struggling? Are they, before my son hit the wall, everybody was like, oh, he's so sweet. He's trying so hard. He's doing this and he's doing that. But, at home, he was becoming more and more sad with each passing day. And, he was always such a joyous child. I mean, joy just exuded from him all the time. It's like he walked around with a permanent smile on his face. And school took that away from him, but he was happy when he was there. He did struggle a little bit with the friendships that he had, but that was more being an only child than anything else. He kind of didn't know how to share very well. But when he hit the wall in a very dramatic, angry, and kind of violent way, and violent to himself, not to anybody else, but violent to himself. Zach's going to try to log on and join us one more time. But, a lot of the kids get looked at for behavioral issues, and we moved from private school to public school. And I spent 2.5 years having the ADHD argument with them, because they were instantly saying, we think he has ADHD, and you need to be doing something about this. And I'm sitting here going, he doesn't have ADHD. And my husband and I were both adamant about that. And then I got set up in a school meeting where I got blindsided. It was so poorly done. But I got blindsided by 3 teachers and the principal with a very clearly scripted out scene to perform in front of me. And I had an advocate hired at the time, and she grabbed my leg under the table because she could feel the anger starting to come off of me, and just waves. And I agreed per her recommendation to go ahead and let them screen him for dyslexia. And of course, the paperwork came back, we think that he's got I said dyslexia, I meant ADHD. And of course, the paperwork came back saying, we feel quite strongly with all of the indicators that we score on that your child has ADHD. But of course, we can't make a medical diagnosis. But you know, it still sat incredibly wrong with my husband and I. And I sent the report to our pediatrician. And I've said this before, but we truly have absolutely the most amazing pediatrician on the planet. And he calls me that night at 6 p.m. and he spoke to me for an hour on the phone, specifically about my child and specifically about this document from the school. And he gets on the phone with me. He's like, Ashley, I've been his pediatrician since he was 2. Your child doesn't have ADHD. What is going on here?
But see, can I just say something really quick? That's
Yeah.
an easy one for the school district, because in the state of California, they actually can say you have to medicate your kid, or we don't have to have your kid. So be careful out there with people saying your kid has ADHD. They could,
Right.
but a lot of times dyslexia and ADHD look the same. And I'm not saying but especially if they have behaviors. So, and
Mhm.
that's an easy one, because they can say, oh, they have ADHD, you should medicate. It's not our problem. So yeah, that's
Right.
something where that's wonderful that your doctor pointed that out, because it's so easy. And especially if they look at, as a parent, I mean, I would have, even myself in education, if somebody said your child has ADHD, she seemed very ADHD, I would have said, okay, that sounds about right. But and
Mhm.
then you look a little further and you're like, no. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there were 2 key things. The first one was the pediatrician wrote a letter to the school that said, I'm his doctor, you're not. Don't practice medicine without a license. This is not an ADHD child. And if you have any more concerns, you need to take it up with me. And I was like, yes, I love you. And the second thing that he did specifically was he even offered to attend an ARD meeting with me in order to put this to bed. Then a very different thing happened. So I engaged an occupational therapist privately to evaluate him for his dysgraphia. And she works with him for a few hours, and she comes to me. And specifically, I hadn't told her anything because this was an OT that didn't want to know anything. She just wanted to know what was the purpose of why I was hiring her. And I said, because he has dysgraphia, I just want you to evaluate him, because I hear that, an OT is who's got to work with my kid. She was like, okay, that's all I need to know. So she sat down with me and she said, the school says he has ADHD, don't they? And I went, how do you know that? And she said, because your son has sensory processing and midline issues, as well as his dysgraphia. Both are components of his dysgraphia. She said, but when your child is under cognitive stress, he's fidgeting. The greater the cognitive stress, the greater the fidgeting. She said it's his comfort mechanism that's kicking in because he's in fear.
Well, and I'm wondering how many kids out there, because my kid is super sensory processing disorder kid. I wonder how many kids out there, what the correlation is between kids who have dyslexia and sensory processing disorders. Anyone who knows that information, we'd love to know. I guess I could research it, but seriously, it does seem like a lot of them are sensory seekers specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
So we have a couple of comments from Zach's mom. So first, she said this was exactly his struggle as well. Academic frustration for Zach was so often mistaken as behavioral issues. And I used to ask his teachers to let him go run a lap on the field at break time to just burn some of his energy and redirect his frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
No, that's so important. Many of our kids get that energy out.
Definitely. And big thing, especially if your kids are in elementary school, get it written into their plans. Don't take recess away from these kids. Just
Ever. I
Get
saw
it
that
written in.
post from Tiffany about, Tiffany James from Nessie, about the keeping kids in at recess. I went to the special trailer at recess lunch recess in 4th grade for my times tables. I'll never forget it. It was very upsetting because, and so when you were talking earlier about Graham's social issues, when kids are being held in at recess
Yeah.
because they're not learning concepts, they're being punished twice. They're
Right.
being punished because they're not able to work on social skills out on the playground, and they're
Right.
not able to build those friendships, and they're being punished because they're still not learning it. They're just spending more time in the struggle.
Right.
So yeah, that's a huge issue. And
And I'm adamant that it needs to be in your plan. I know you were the advocate in one of the meetings where I was like, you're going to add it. And they went, no, we're not.
yeah,
And
you are. You are. You're going to be adding that. There's no reason to take recess away from a kid. No.
And I never got it out. I never got it added to his IEP plan, but they were like, we'll never take away his recess. And, but we can't add it because of this, that, and the other. They had a litany of excuses of why they couldn't add it. And I looked at them and I said, all right, but here's the deal. If you're not going to add it to the plan, if it ever happens, I will rain hell. Just know that now.
Yeah. Right.
So, push me, please.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to, before I forgot, I wanted to bring up a point about second grade. So kids hit a wall in second or third grade, really hit a wall of like hating school or loving school, or this is hard or this isn't hard. And one of the reasons why is because if you look at standard core curriculum in any state, there are certain core fundamental foundational skills that need to be mastered, not just to move on to the next grade, but to understand the next concepts in language. So there are certain things that, so for instance, phonological awareness skills. We talk a lot about phonological awareness skills. Students need to have rhyming, syllable awareness, and sound segmentation by the end of second grade. Okay, there's others, but those are the most important. And so these students don't, and the school districts don't really check. They do these little screeners, but the screeners don't totally make sure that they get all that, right? So some kids have mastered certain clapping. They understand certain rhythm of clapping for syllables, but they don't understand the concept of syllables. Or they can segment simple words, but not ones with more complex blends and more complex words. So if they're not giving appropriate screeners at the end of second grade and they're not finding these holes don't fill themselves. So the same holes that weren't filled for Zach in second grade were still there when I met him 3 months ago. So of course there's going to be struggle. And there's no way that the parents could have known this. Somebody needs to show them that there's these holes, right? So the reason why there's no way they could know this is because they report, and everybody can relate to this who's been in an IEP who's had a phonological awareness test, okay? They say, oh, here's your child's standard scores for the phonological awareness test. Oh, they're coming out at the 79% or standard score for segmentation or this or that. They're giving you standard scores. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. And they might even say they're average, and yet they're average on the test, but maybe they have a really low score in one subtest, and that means they have a hole. A low score in a subtest means they have a hole. So in order to fill those holes appropriately and make sure the school district is making sure that those skills are being mastered and holes are being filled, you need to get the protocol of the phonological awareness test. Nothing else helps you. So if you don't have the protocol and you can look at the protocol and say, oh my gosh, he got 0 or 2 out of 10 on rhyming, it appears he doesn't have rhyming. Oh, he got 3 out of 10 on syllables. It appears he doesn't have syllables. Then we need to write a syllable goal and a rhyming goal. Whatever holes they have, they need to have a goal for it. Giving them a program doesn't help them if they don't have specific goals to meet those skills. So I can't stress that enough. So if you're concerned about your child, you don't feel like they're reading at grade level, you feel like they're struggling, you feel like there's behavior, you feel like it's reading related, request a phonological awareness test, request a full psychoeducational evaluation, but make sure there's a phonological awareness test. There's, a couple that are the gold standard that they're using, but it's a standardized phonological awareness test. And then you ask for the protocol. Ask for the protocol at the IEP, look at the protocol, see where the holes are, and then demand that they write goals specifically for where those holes are, because they will not fill themselves. Every single student I meet in third, fourth, up to high school still has holes in phonological skills. And it's not hard, especially in second grade, to fill those holes. You don't even need a whole program. You literally could just work on rhyming with the students or syllables or whatever it is that they need at that level and write a goal for it. And it's just so important, though. It's second grade, third grade, because then if you don't get it, then the compensation starts. The compensatory strategies start. Now, those are bad habits we have to break. So we have those two issues. We have the issues of they're not finding the holes for the students at the end of second grade. So we have to be proactive as parents and go in there and say, I want this test because I feel they're not progressing in reading, writing, and spelling. And if that happens, it'll be a lot easier to catch them earlier before they have the really, develop the behaviors and the compensatory strategies and just the hating of school and the hating of reading and all of that.
So a couple of things. One, Zach is completely locked out, but he's sitting with his mom listening. And she also wrote that second grade was Zach's hardest year. I can say that for my child, he was never going to learn to read in the environment that he was in. It just absolutely was not going to happen. And he did start acting out in pre-K 4. He started acting out more in kindergarten. Kindergarten was still fun. Pre-K 4, still had a lot of fun to it. So the acting out seemed kind of normal for a child, not excessive in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
It was the sadness that began in first grade, and he was at the end of first grade. And by the way, I can show you 2 years of report cards for kindergarten and first grade saying what an amazing decoder he is becoming and how his automaticity is progressing and what a good reader he's becoming and how proud they are of him, of how hard he's working.
But they weren't checking his phonological awareness skills.
When he hit the wall, he could not tell you the sounds of all of the letters of the alphabet. He couldn't take 2 letters and combine them into a sound at all. He was, he could recognize the word "the" on a piece of paper because he had memorized it.
Mm-hmm.
And an A, not A and D, A-N. He couldn't memorize A and D.
Yeah, many of these kids are good memorizers for certain things, really good memorizers for certain things. Yeah.
So everybody's cheating off of him for math, and he's cheating off of all of them for reading as much as he could. But the fact of the matter is, he couldn't read at all. I mean, absolutely at all. Could not take two letters and combine them into a sound in order to even begin to try to sound out a word.
Could he memorize books because he could look at the pictures and figure it? Because I had some students who could just memorize the book. Like they'd go to the book and memorize it, and then they'd convince everyone they'd learned how to read.
Yeah. No, he never did that.
Yeah.
That was not something that he did. So it was a frustrating meltdown because when we got those evaluations back and I confronted the school with his report cards in hand, said, "You've been lying to me for 2 years." He's decoding. He's, becoming a reader. I mean, y'all are just flat out lying here.
Mm-hmm.
It was so heartbreaking to me that I was like, I can't believe, I mean, first of all, the parent shame that comes in with that, of sitting here going, you've taken away my child's joy. You've broken my child, and he's only 7. How dare you? But
well, and it's so hard when parents are, say things like, "Oh my gosh," and if I had just, and whatever, I wish I would have. And it's like, you can't go back. All you can do is move forward.
Right.
But for those who are listening, who haven't gotten to that point yet, trust your gut and just go with it. If you feel like, this isn't right, they're telling me my kid read, and I know my kid can't read, go to them and say, I want this, I want you to evaluate. Because sometimes, and these kids can fool. They can fool the people around them at school. They're smart kids. They are, very stealth. Sometimes they can just compensate. They can memorize things. They can, like you said, look on their neighbors, figure out what's going on. They're very good at observing other people, very aware of their surroundings. So they can get by. Many of them are very charming. Many, some will act out. Some will try to become, like invisible, some, it's just different ways that kids get by, which when you think about, I understand the point about it not being a gift in that terms. If you think about what you have to do just to get through a day in school, honestly, for a kid. And then when you get older, and maybe for a lot of people, it's that way at work, just to get through the day at work, and things are so much harder. Right. So, that is the part that doesn't feel like a gift, but, Yeah.
So Zach's mom shared that sixth grade was his biggest year for academic progress.
Mm. And I have to say, it was probably a lot to do with the teacher. Because Zach, like so many students, when he makes a connection with a teacher, and that teacher can make a connection with Zach or with any student, it's, they can, because she probably tried to figure out how he learned, and he's brilliant. So she was able to bring that in, whereas some teachers, it's like anything else with, when we focus on the strengths versus the weakness and the struggles, right? So the teachers that are like, why can't you just get your work done? Da, 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 da. You give up with that teacher, right? But the
Right.
teacher who's like, wow, you're amazing. I love your ideas. Can you share more of that with me? Can you tell me about this or whatever that brings that out in you? That's the teacher that's going to make the difference.
He said that's when he learned to read, that it
Uh,
just came to me. His
okay.
words, it just came
Yeah.
to me.
Oh, wow. I love it. Which is miraculous in a way,
Mhm.
because it shows that he is so bright and he figured out, in spite of the fact that they didn't fill all of his holes along the way.
Right. But at
So,
least he's come across you and you're filling the holes, which will make him a better reader.
oh yeah, yeah, and so some of the holes I want to say too that are just real simple are things like stopping at periods and pausing at commas. Okay, that's one of those things they don't make real clear in school. They don't really explain punctuation. They're like, make sure you put a period at the end, make sure you capitalize, but there's not a whole lot of why, and we stop at periods and we pause at commas partly so we can reflect on what we're reading. We do it for expression. We do it so that we can separate thoughts, but we also do it so that we can stop and reflect and think about what we're reading. However, in school, they have these crazy things called fluency tests, which create this idea in kids' heads that they have to read quickly. So when you've been timed your whole life while reading, you believe that the whole purpose of reading is to do it quickly. So
Mhm.
when that is your purpose is just to get through it, and you're not stopping and pausing and reflecting, you're
Mhm.
not having high comprehension scores
Right.
because you're just getting through it.
Right.
So when students just get that little bit of awareness of what that we stop and we pause and we reflect, it's that increases comprehension, just that one little thing, just like that. So some of those are some of the holes. They're not like complicated holes. They're just little things that they kind of didn't get along the way that most kids don't get because it's not taught. And so,
So I want to read two comments. And the first one's from Zach's mom. Building his confidence. It shifted. Building his confidence helped relieve the pressure. He left sixth grade at a fourth to fifth grade reading level. So there was still a limiting wall, but he definitely learned compensation.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then we had a comment from a parent, Tina. This is where, as a parent, I can get confused on what tests are needed to figure out what the holes are.
Okay, so for phonological awareness tests, you want a C-top or a GORT. The FAR is one, but I like the C-top or the GORT. So if you have a preference, or the FAR, those are the three top ones. And you want a full standardized phonological awareness test. You don't want a screener, because depending on who's administering the screener, it's hard sometimes to get the little subtleties. So
And
um,
depending on the screener.
and a what?
And depending on the screener.
Right. And it actually says on the FAR that it should be administered by someone who has an understanding of dyslexia. So you want to make sure that it's a school psychologist or a speech pathologist, but preferably somebody that understands the whole understanding of phonological and dyslexia. Um, so that's what you want to find the phonological holes. Once you get one of those done, then I said, like I said before, you get a protocol. You go through the protocol, you find where they're weak, where they have low scores. Whatever the low scores are, it's really easy to say, okay, I want a rhyming goal, I want a this goal, I want a that goal. To find the holes, as far as to see if kids aren't stopping at periods and pausing at commas, read with them. Because you just have them read something and you can see that real fast. So read with your students and just see, are they stopping at periods and pausing at commas? And if they're not, explain to them why we do it. Say we need time to reflect, we don't need to read quickly. And let them know. Say they've given you the impression that you're supposed to read quickly. We know that, because they really do. I ask them. I said, "Do you think you need to read quickly because of those time tests?" Oh yeah. So we need to get that idea out of their heads. The time tests are the worst things ever. It's part of balanced literacy. Let's just time and make them feel like if they can decode quickly. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't have an understanding for it, because personally, I read quite well, but I don't read quickly, and that's just how I read, and that should be okay. And maybe for understanding, let me don't get me wrong, I can scan like nobody. I can get information out of a page really quickly if I have to. But if I want to read for deep meaning, it's not going to be quick.
Right.
So we really have to get it out of their heads that they have to do
But I
that.
think the speed thing is important because I know this year that that's a huge thing with my child. You know, he is racing through everything as fast as he possibly can. Part of it is he just wants it to be over with.
Oh, and I get that. Yeah.
He absolutely
Yeah.
just
No,
wants it to be over
it's
with.
horrible stuff. I mean, a lot of this stuff is really boring too, let me tell you, because I'm doing online work with kids and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is what they have to learn. It's not applicable to life. And it's just busy work, in my opinion. Nobody, yeah. So anyway, we're gonna be off on that tangent.
But part of it too, I think, is I definitely think that there's a fear-based thing there. He's had a lot of anxiety over test because of course he's virtual. So of course the teacher on the Zoom is telling the vast majority of the class, you only have 50 minutes in order to complete the test. And I'm sitting here going, no, you don't. You have extra time. And he's not believing me. He's believing the teacher who's telling him that he only has 50 minutes to take the test.
Right.
He's had an instance where the teacher has loaded two versions of the test, the time test for everybody else, and then the read aloud test for the kids that had dyslexia within the class.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't clear, and he accessed the timed test, not the read aloud test. And so he did only have 50 minutes in order to do the test. And so he was racing through it. And we got to the end, and he was like, well, apparently I took the wrong test. Apparently I took the time test. And I was like, no. And he ended up doing pretty well on the test, but if he hadn't, I was really on the brink of going back to the school and going, so that's going to get erased.
Yeah, right.
And this is a full do-over because I'm just like, no.
You know what's so crazy about that? Okay, so my oldest daughter, has always, since she started school, scored 2 to 3 grade levels higher than her grade, right? Always, every single year. They loved her for state testing. However, because we told her right off the bat, you take your time. She was the last one. She didn't have accommodations. She was the last one always. And had she not been allowed to just in her own self know that she always had that much time, she probably would have done poorly as opposed to really well, right?
Right.
And so she was actually a student she was the opposite of me. I struggled on standardized testing. Anything with multiple choice, I doubted myself. I doubted. I would go, oh no, it's not that. It might. So I would do really poorly, and I would rush through it. She would struggle more in the class side of things because it was so boring, and excelled on testing. So that can happen too. Just. Yeah.
So we have a question from a parent. What are the best tests to be able to repeat to track progress? CTOP 2 or DIBELS or LIST or some I've heard of. Our son had CTOP 2 before starting OG 2 years ago. Would it be good to repeat it now to see his progress? It was done privately. Our school does not use any tests like this to track progress and would love to know what to ask for.
Okay,
So
here's the beautiful.
Before you answer, I just want to say we get the GORT on an annual basis every March 2nd, and that is what my family is using to track progress. And
Nice.
It's done privately because the school flat out refuses to administer the GORT on a yearly basis.
Okay, so let me just say this about that. So the tests that can only be administered every 3 years are tests that are related to IQ. So speech and language tests, IQ tests, those tests can't be given more than every 3 years because there's the fear that the student would somehow learn the test and it wouldn't be valid. However, so that's accurate. You can't. So when certain tests can only be given every 3 years. However, a CTOP, a GORT, and a FAR can be given every 6 months if you want. They can be given. You can't learn what you don't know. So if you can rhyme, if you can't rhyme the first time they give you the FAR or the CTOP or the GORT, and then you can rhyme the next time, you can rhyme. You can't do something you can't do, right? So you can learn kind of like how a test is set up on those other tests. But as far as a phonological awareness skill, you can't fake it. You can't. So that is the reason why some tests can't be given very often. But those ones, yeah, no, we could give them all the time if we wanted, just to see if they've developed the skill, because you either have the skill or you don't. And if you can demonstrate it on the test, you have it. So if they're saying it can't be given, it can be given as much as possible. However, they're probably not going to. But I would think a year, even for the school district, if you have a student who's behind, any more than 6 months behind, and you want to make sure that the gap is closing, not getting wider, I think you have every right to request it every year.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to. Yeah.
So I told the school that I wanted it more than anything because they were not giving me any other way, because how they're tracking his goals is completely arbitrary.
Right.
There's no scientific data behind that. And I want mathematically quantifiable data in order to track his progress and his remediation.
You have every right to request data.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So because his first remediation was done through Linda Mood Bell, that's the baseline evaluation. And so he returns to Linda Mood Bell, like I said, every March 2nd. And this battery of tests are re-administered, but it's the GORT that we hinge everything on. And that's what we graph from a year to year basis. And so I think he was 2 years in, and all of his GORT scores plummeted rather dramatically. I mean, like 1 to 2 years in each section, his GORT scores just plummeted. And it was at that point that we figured out that he had orthographic dyslexia. That because his dyslexia had been so severe and his remediation had needed to be so intense, that, you know, as we were able to, you know, give him tools, he was able to show us other weaknesses that were kind of hiding. I don't want to say hiding, because it's not the right word, but
they weren't presenting yet.
They weren't presenting because the reading was so overwhelmingly severe, right?
Right.
But for me, what was helpful too was we worked as a team with his tutors, with different individuals that were helping guide us, et cetera, with that GORT on an annual basis to go, okay, so this improved or this got worse. So it's definitely orthographic dyslexia. We need to adjust his remediation in these ways. So it was the guidepost, if you will.
Well, when I met him, his phonological skills were totally intact. So that was the good thing. And so that's just to say, like, in what we're talking about, you know, you made sure that it wasn't, because sometimes, and this was what drives me batty. Okay. There are many great programs out there that are used, you know, certified OG programs. However, we say to ourselves, how can a student be progressing in a program and appear to be doing well in a program, and then they can't read a book, okay? Or they're still not reading a book. They're still not writing a passage. And they're not generalizing the skills that they're learning in the program. This happens a lot. And so what they do, though, in IEPs is they say, oh, student will progress 4 levels on program. Well, again, if it's not generalizing into academics and they're not getting up to grade level, the program is useless. Okay, now I'm not saying these programs are useless. They're wonderful if we can use them in conjunction with writing appropriate IEP goals. So it doesn't do anybody any good to work on these skills in isolation and talk about a program and improving on a program if skills aren't improving throughout everything in academics. So we need to make sure that the goal so I can't make this any clearer. So if ever anybody puts in your child's IEP that they will improve on a program, you have them take that goal out. Goals are not programs. We're not making them programs be the improvement. The student's skill is what needs to be the improvement. So when it says that, you say, tell me this, these are the skills my student doesn't have. They don't have rhyming, they don't have syllables, they don't have segmentation. This is an example. I want a goal for rhyming, I want a goal for syllables, I want a goal for segmentation. And then you do that in your program, great. And I also want to make sure this generalizes into the academics. So it's all of that needs to happen, but a program itself cannot stand alone and especially not in a goal. We need to make sure that we're targeting the skills, like you did by making sure the GORT was done and you made sure these skills were being targeted.
Right. And that's a huge thing that we find. And you and I have talked about this a lot. And you and Julie and I have talked about this a lot. You and Julie have talked about this a lot. And Julie and I, right? So,
Which one? We talk about a lot of things, but yeah, what's this one?
well, completion of a lesson in a program does not equal mastery of that skill set.
We have talked about this a lot. Yes.
So, the focus needs to not be on checking off, yes, we did lesson 1. Yes, we did lesson 2. Yes, we did lesson 3. Did the child synthesize that information? Did that become part of their skill set or not? Are they able to use that technically, as you just said? Not, yes, we did lesson 1. And
or they moved through a level, because that's how they say it in school. They go, oh, they're on level 9. What does that even mean? They're on level 9, but they're still not reading a book or writing a passage.
And then here's the other thing. How are they, what evaluations are they using in order to test mastery of the individual skill sets? Because here's my favorite flipping recent thing, and I had told you about this, Enid. You're going to flip.
Oh, no.
Had a phone call the beginning of the year. She's sweet. She's trying. It was not this individual's fault. And she's telling me about this very specific evaluation that was performed, beginning of the year evaluation that was performed on my child in order to determine where he was, right? So, and I quote, so he scored 6 out of 10, which is 60%. And by district standards, that is complete mastery. So he's mastered that section with 6 out of 10 at 60%.
Because they have really low standards in the districts. Because when a student is in 8th grade and they're reading at the 4th grade level and they say that's okay because that's average, that is a low. Yeah, I know. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, I have to get off this phone call now. Thank you so much for this information. Okay, have a good day. Goodbye.
Oh my God. And that is a problem. And that is a problem we all need to be concerned about, is that the standards are low. So when you think your student is doing okay, it's because, especially when you're like, it doesn't feel like they're doing okay, and yet they're getting by. It's partly because the standards are so low. I mean, and here's another thing too. So I was speaking to one of my friends who's an administrator at one point, and I said, so I'm going through all the things, the California state content standards. They need to know prepositions at the end of 2nd grade. They need to know plurals, pronouns. Most of these they don't know, by the way. They need to know nouns, not just person, place, or thing, but an actual example of a noun. There's many things they need to know. Again, like I say, rhyming, segmentation, syllabification. And yet I say to my administrator friend, do they check these things? Do they check for every student at the end of each year that they have these standards and that they have them all mastered before they move on to the next level? And he says, no, they don't really have a mechanism to check that. And then I said, so the 3rd grade teacher checks it, right? And so then they can know what they have to work on. No, because they already have enough other stuff they have to work on. So just let's be clear. They have they have in every state, they have content standards, but nobody's actually checking to make sure your children are mastering them at the end of every level. So you can actually go on. And again, I mentioned IXL before, but IXL is a great resource to find your state content standards and say, my kid doesn't know what plurals are. My kid doesn't know what this is. I'm going to go back to my district and say, they don't know all of these things. What are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm, definitely. So we have a couple of questions. One from Monique. Enid, do you know where I can find that in writing? I love giving the CTOP because it is so informative, but I've been told not to because school psychs use it for SPED testing. And they think if I give it, it will skew their scores.
Is this Monique Everett Day?
Yes.
Well, no, you can. I'll find it, Monique, because Monique should be given it. Monique is really good at no. And I said, I'm sorry, Monique, too earlier, because I said school psychologist and speech pathologist, and Monique is a gifted reading teacher. So a gifted reading teacher obviously knows dyslexia, can give that very well. And so I should have said that earlier. So thank you, Monique, for saying something. I just, usually at the school, it is the school psychologist or the speech path that gives it. But no, I will do my best to try to find that. But
Well, she says thank you. So we have another comment from EK. How does GORP differ from CTOP2 at helping find out where the weaknesses are? Our son would be classified as orthographic dyslexic 2. Phonological memory was his weakest score on the CTOP 2, but really his biggest weakness is spelling. Does Gort go further into checking where they are in spelling?
I like to give a phonics test to see where they are in spelling. And Monique, I would love for you to chime in at any point if you have any comments about this. But I like a phonological awareness test to focus on phonological awareness. I'm not sure if what the phonics piece is on the GORT. I'd have to look at it a little bit further.
So the GORT is rate, fluency, accuracy, and comprehension.
Oh, so they do go further into phonics, whereas the CTOP and the FAR are just phonological. So, and the reason why I brought up the GORT is because that's all some of the school districts have. I prefer the CTOP over all of them for phonological. However, the FAR and the GORT seem to be the two that are the most popular. But preferably the best case scenario, and I'm wondering what you think, Monique, is a CTOP, a phonological awareness test, just phonological awareness, and then a phonics assessment. For the phonics assessment, I like the code knowledge test and the spelling developmental spelling assessment.
So Zach's mom came back and said that Zach says, thank you for having him on. And as his mom, thank you for honoring his strengths. Parents out there, don't give up. Don't give up hope for great accomplishments for your kiddos.
Oh, and I want to say that the message that Zach really wants to get out there is that it's not bad to have dyslexia. It's actually a good thing. And he's going to continue to make YouTube videos, and we will put his link to his YouTube channel on here. He welcomes people getting engaged with him on his YouTube channel, asking questions. It's just wonderful that he wants to share, the fact that he feels that it's a good thing. And I think that that's a really great role model for younger children to see where he is today. And he did have some struggles, and he did have some challenges with behavior because he was frustrated. But he is a remarkable young man who, the ideas he's already given me for my business and the way that his mind works is just, his ability to really truly think outside of the box is remarkable, and so much about him. So I'm so honored to know you, Zach, and to have you on here today. And
I want to say, that our children that are willing, it's a huge brave thing. Our children that are willing to stand up and participate and be a voice within this movement, like you and I have talked about. I mean, my son is like, don't put me on there. I'm not going to be your poster kid. This isn't going to happen for me, and I'm not saying that Zach is better than my son. It's a different level of bravery, because I think that it takes a boldness of spirit to be willing to put themselves out there, especially when they're so young, and, to help try to raise awareness on a grander scale. And I additionally wanted to give a shout out to Titan Reads. It's a fantastic page on Facebook, and I recommend that everybody follows it. But Titan wrote the most beautiful piece for us for our quarterly newsletter.
And it's beautiful, by the way.
It is, isn't it?
Free newsletter, everybody, with so many amazing contributions. So we're so impressed. I'm so impressed.
And his article was called "It's Great to Be Different Things."
Oh, I love that.
And with his mother, we talked about it quite a bit. And Titan is only 8, and Titan is trying to help raise awareness for dyslexia as well. And, he encourages boys and girls his age to reach out to him, and, he'll be their friend and talk about dyslexia with them. He's just such a courageous young man. And his mom and I talked about his piece for quite a bit. I mean, we had a really in-depth conversation because she said, we want to share both the edited and the unedited version so that we can really show dyslexia and the struggle that can go into our kids having their dyslexia.
I have a funny story to share really quickly because that goes along with it. Oh my gosh, that's funny because it's a really good point to show that it's not that we can't be successful as a dyslexic, really successful, but it might take a different path, right? So
Right.
it's funny that you say that because I said to Zach, we were doing a paper the other night, an essay together, and he goes, "Oh, it's okay. I'm gonna edit it later. I'm gonna have my mom go through it with me." And I go, "Oh, that's right," because his mom is a gifted writer. And I said, "That's funny." I said, "Because she edited my report that I gave to the school district for the IEP." And he kind of laughed. And I thought, no, because she's really good. And if I'm going to have it edited, I'm going to have it edited by the best. But I'm
Right.
still going to have it edited, right? Because I still know that with my dysgraphia, that I'm going to miss a ton of things. And so it's just interesting that you say that. I think it's a really good point. It doesn't mean that, just because we come out with a good piece, it doesn't mean that it was hard for us. Because I think some people who have dyslexia and have really felt the struggle, I think it's hard to know that you can actually, I guess it's coming up with strategies to come
Mhm.
out with the end piece that looks just like anybody else who just wrote it up.
So and on that vein, I met a family, gosh, 3 years ago. Most amazing family, 4 kids in this family. 3 out of the 4 were dyslexic. It was the oldest child who was not dyslexic. And the oldest child was at that time close to completing their PhD, and they were going to be a college professor. I don't remember in what subject area. The second oldest child was a nurse. She had already completed her nursing degree, and she was working on an advanced nursing degree. She was one of the more mild of the 3, but dyslexia had still been a pretty good struggle for her. Her older sister had always been her editor. So this woman, this nurse, she said she planned really, as soon as she got the assignment, she started planning out her writing assignments, and she would go through multiple drafts, and she would take it as far as she could possibly take it. And then she would send it to her sister and go, edit.
Mm-hmm.
And her sister would go through and clean it up from a formatting perspective, and correct grammar, correct spelling, and send it back to her. And this woman, this nurse, was like, that's been my coping mechanism, is my sister is my editor, and she's been
Mm-hmm.
gracious enough to be my editor my entire educational career.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'm so blessed to have this person in my life who can do that for me. But that's what's so profound about Titan's piece, is it shows
Mm-hmm.
an 8-year-old dyslexic
Mm-hmm.
child's beautiful words,
Mm-hmm.
unedited. So it's got all the grammar
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and all the spelling mistakes, and then the edited version. And it's so beautiful. And I was so honored that his mom had that idea, that she wanted to share
Mm-hmm.
both sides
I
of
love that too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that effort. And then we published it too, and it's such a beautiful piece. It's such a touching piece.
Oh, and
So
I love that so much because so many of my students have so many brilliant ideas that if they could just get them out, it would be so powerful for them and for others to be able to read it. And I find that it's like that meme I posted on my page about spelling is difficult, cross it off. Spelling is, challenging, cross it off. Spelling is hard, right? So we're going
right,
to take the easiest one, and so we're going to write we're going to write the simplest thoughts we can get out on paper. If someone tells us, asks us what is our opinion, my opinion is that it was good. We're not, and yet the student can express so much and explain so much orally, and yet getting it out on paper. So I honor that so much because it is showing so many people that don't get limited by these challenges because there are ways around it. Thank you, Titan, so much for saying that. And I mean, just for doing it and for putting that message out there because, um, like you said, beautiful words. Why should those beautiful words not be put out there, right? But they're
right,
not because it's too challenging.
right.
So if we can find ways and we can have people scribe for us when we want to get our thoughts out. So I mean, I find it interesting. Sometimes I always say to students, writing is just thoughts written down because I think there's such a disconnect between these beautiful thoughts inside of, these individuals' heads and getting them down on paper because of the challenge of getting them down on paper. So Oh, that is huge. It's huge on a lot of levels, Titan, really huge, because it's opening the doors of saying, look what I can accomplish in spite of my challenges. And I think that's what I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate when I'm talking about gifts. I want to celebrate the fact that sometimes it's the ideas inside of the head. It's not it's not the, how it looks when it's out on paper. It's just that you have brilliant ideas. And that's that highly creative mind. I want to encourage one more time, and we'll put the link because I brought this up several times before. But if you look at the characteristics of the 20 characteristics of highly creative people, it also kind of mirrors dyslexia. So if you think about one of the gifts, as we talk about gifts, is a highly creative mind. And so Titan is helping to open that door to say, let's get these highly creative thoughts down on paper. Let's put our beautiful thoughts on paper, and it's okay because there's ways we can do it. So I love that.
So I'm answering a question real quick.
And then we probably wrap it up, huh?
Yes.
This has been a great discussion though today.
It really has, but I really wanted to thank Zach for coming on and wanting to talk about his gifts. And I know we brought up Titan too, but it's just, these kids take my breath away, that they want to share their journey. They want to share their story with everybody, and they want to show, because I've been saying it a lot lately, we're treating dyslexia as though it's a disability, and it's not. And we need to really stop doing that. But it's through voice.
And it is. We listen to the children. We do. I mean, I like to think we do. Sometimes our voices get droned out, because we've had the same message, the same voices. But when we have new young voices and new voices and people who are really living it, speaking their truth, I think that is so powerful. And I am so grateful to Zach for sharing his message, because he is very articulate and very it's another one of his gifts, very able to express and communicate his journey and what he's been through, and really inspire. And he has a desire to inspire, and I love that.
So real quick to Susan, we were talking about the GORT, the CTOP 2, and the FAR. And EK had one more question. And what were the spelling tests that you liked? The developmental spelling list, is that what it was?
So it's called the Code Knowledge Test is one of them. And the other one is the Developmental Spelling Assessment, because it's the DSA. That's the right acronym, yes. So you used to be able to get the Developmental Spelling Assessment online for free, but I haven't been able to find it lately. So,
and I know Graham's been given the Test of Written Spelling, the TWS, I think the 5th version.
I like the Code Knowledge Test because it looks at all the code. So basically all the spelling code. So if they, to know if they know DGE, to know if they know soft C, to know if they know the vowel patterns, all of the spelling code is on the Code Knowledge Test. I really like that one. But the Developmental Spelling Assessment is a good one. Just developmentally what they should have. They're similar.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We've run really long, so we're going to wrap up here. We will be back soon. We don't have our next one exactly scheduled yet, but it will be very, very quickly. And you can find the link to that date, time, and subject, possibly guest, on our page at the Dyslexia Initiative in the events section. So I hope everybody has a really great weekend.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.